Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after, Renny's getting pretty serious about things when he uses this word. He likes to use this word, phenomenal. Phenomenal game by the Winnipeg Jets, and a game that I think, as we search through this Winnipeg Jets season, looking for, sifting through the results to try and find reasons to believe, which can be hard because the last couple of years they looked like a team capable of doing things and then things fell out from underneath them. I submit that this game is maybe the best example, the most important example we've had this season of why you should believe in the Winnipeg Jets heading into the playoffs. I'm going to get to that right away. But first, I have to take some time to talk about something I hate talking about. And I'm extremely broken up and I'm extremely sad about it. The loss of our colleague, Greg Millen. Shocking news. Absolutely shocking. Coming out of nowhere. I've had the pleasure, the honor, and had it quite a bit earlier in my career when I first got started. Okay, my path to Hockey Night in Canada, I started with Sportsnet in 2014. I think I did my first Jets game in 2015. And when you start out, you end up with different crews. You have different people calling games. You have different people doing play-by-play on games. And I ended up doing a lot of games with Greg Millen. And I've talked before about doing a game with Bob Cole. Did a couple of games with Bob, but the first time I did one with Bob was just an absolute pinch me moment. We all know Bob's a legend. Greg Millen was just, a pro's pro, and had the pleasure of being on the beat with him and on a crew with him for quite a long time. And I just cannot stress how much of an advantage it is, when you're trying to start out a career in this and you're like going on to this institution that's Hockey Night in Canada and doing this and trying to make sure that you do your job in a way that it's, properly serving fans. Having a resource like Greg Millen, who was just absolutely a pro's pro, was invaluable. I can tell you, loved the way that he called games, always walked into Winnipeg and gave the Jets the utmost respect. I feel like he always did a good job of, like, Hockey Night in Canada is supposed to be this, it's supposed to be this thing that elevates, right? And everyone is supposed to feel like when you get on Hockey Night in Canada, everything gets taken to another level. And there has to be a feeling of, the content, the teams that you're covering being worthy of that level. And I always found, if you were a Winnipeg Jets fan, if you would have had Greg Millen coming in and doing games, it felt like he was calling, the Montreal Canadiens or the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know that, like, hey, we're talking about the Winnipeg Jets, who are number one in the league. I'm not saying that there's a difference between that, but we all know the history of different teams and places. Greg Millen, in my mind, always made Winnipeg feel like they were right there in that spot, occupied, with the best of the best. I can tell you, as a teammate, I always have a lot of admiration for guys who can be players and then can truly leave that behind and become broadcasters. Gary Galley is another great example of it, but guys who are able to leave the game and not insert themselves into it or kind of like take the broadcaster's role. It's not easy to do, and you'll see a lot of former players don't get there. Greg got there. He got there a long time ago. He was a pro. He was a great teammate. He helped build you up. He helped me find confidence when confidence was, not easy to find at the beginning. When Greg told you something, you better listen, because what I learned is time after time after time, And I would call Greg the number of times that I've called him in the middle of the summer or, during the season or whatever for advice. Sometimes I'd get into a scrape with a player in the dressing room. Sometimes, I things, I would have handled something and I wasn't sure how well I'd handled it. And I'd give Greg a call, and Greg would talk you through it. He'd be blunt if being blunt was needed. But every time he said something, I walked away, and in retrospect, all of the advice that he gave me was absolutely ironclad. And having a resource like that in my life, I could not thank him enough for what he did for me in my career, and I can't thank him enough for just being my friend, because he was a good friend. And the other human side of this, Greg had like this great self-deprecating humor. I just wanted to tell a quick story. We were down in Dallas doing a Jets Stars game. We went to Pecan Lodge because Ken and I are the guys, we take people out to the good food places. It's a great barbecue place. And we were standing in line, and a couple guys came over and they were like, "Hey, are you Greg Millen?" And he was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Wow, we are just such huge fans of yours." And he's like, "Oh, where are you guys from? You're from Toronto or Ottawa?" And it's like, "No, we're from St. Louis. Like, we grew up watching you play goal, and we're just absolute massive fans of yours." And they just kind of gushed over him, and he gave them the time, which he always did. If someone came up to talk to Greg, he gave them the time. My buddy Colin McDougall, who's been texting me, because Greg was doing Canucks games in the playoffs last year. Colin called him out and said, "Hey, I'm Sean Reynolds' good friend." And then I got a series of chirps back and forth from both Colin and Greg, both chirping me as they're standing with each other, the double barrel barrage, just the kind of fun stuff that he'd pick up with, someone who is an absolute stranger, and be like, "Well, let's take the piss out of that guy right now for 5 minutes before I head into the game and call a Stanley Cup, playoff hockey game." But back to the story at the Pecan Lodge in Dallas. Those guys walked away, and we turned and we said to him, "Well, how often does that happen?" And his response was, "Well, that's the first time, guys." But such a humble guy. My last story, my nephew Jack Reynolds lives out in Lactabani. He's a big Blues fan. I think it's because our senior hockey team out there was the Lactabani Blues. He fell in love with the jersey, fell in love with the team. So he was one of the few ecstatic people in Manitoba when they knocked off the Jets in 2019 and won it all. I was doing a game down in St. Louis, and I invited Jack and his dad to come along and stay with me in the hotel room to come watch a game. And I went to Greg and I said, "My nephew's a really, really big Blues fan. And I was wondering if next week, because we'd been working a game the week before, I said, I'm wondering next week if you could, come say hi or do whatever." I just, I didn't even know if he'd remember it. Well, the next week we're down in the restaurant in the lobby, and Greg comes walking over, and he doesn't even need me to introduce him. Jack is sitting beside me, and he comes in behind him and puts his hands on his shoulders and says, "Well, I heard we've got a future star St. Louis Blues player here." Just gave him all the time in the world, made him feel like $1 million, brought Bernie Federko over, introduced him to Bernie Federko. People should know Greg Millen, really, really connected, really, really good friends with Bernie Federko's one, really good friends with Ron Francis, another from his playing days. If you'd played with Millsy, you loved Millsy. He was a good guy. Treated my nephew like $1 million, treated me the best I could have possibly hoped to have been treated. Massive effect on my career. I'm so sorry to his family. Condolences. He was a great one in every single way. We love you, Millsy, and we're going to miss you. Let's transfer to the game here, folks. Okay, I think this is it. So, okay, sorry. You know what? We're not even going to bring the music in. I think Ken wants to weigh in on this before we do this. So let's bring Ken in here, and he's going to have his word on Greg.
Hey, buddy. Yeah, no, I mean, you touched on all the bases. there. I just wanted to give you a little quick breather here. Obviously, you hit all the notes there. You worked with him a lot longer than I did, but Greg was kind of the person that just touches everyone who's around him, and it's just devastating news. I mean, when you sent that to me, I was shocked. Right? I mean, whether it's weeks or months, I mean, Greg comes in for games and gives you the pat on the back and so happy to see you, and he it's just crazy to think at 67 that he has passed away, and we won't be able to have those conversations again. So anyways, I just wanted to come in, and I mean, you hit, like I said, I don't have too much to add. I just wanted to sort of echo with what you were saying and try to help with the transition as best as possible. I mean, Greg is someone, like I said, he's someone that we've got to know over these, I mean, for me, 14 years covering the Jets, and Greg would come in with a smile on a Saturday night, or whether it was doing a regional game or a national game. I mean, this is a guy who had relationships with people like Paul Maurice. I mean, Mark Chippen, the owner, would see Greg and be happy to see him, and those guys would have great conversations. And Greg's the kind of guy who loved talking about hockey, but always asking how you're doing. I mean, it just so wild, right? So Sean, I know you're on OV Watch, and it was just incredible, and I'm so proud of you, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show. But I saw Greg's partner yesterday, John Abbott, right? I mean, we're in the press box. I'm sitting forced 3 seats over from John, and John's excited to cover the Jets game on a Saturday, and the next, it just seems wild to me. They were supposed to cover a game today, and it's incredibly sad news. This is a guy who had an incredible zest for life, and loved his family deeply. Was always so proud of his kids, and whether his son was playing minor league hockey or trying to work his way up in the official ranks. He just loved his family so much, and loved the game itself. And this is a big loss for the hockey community. And again, this has nothing to do with Greg working at Sportsnet. I mean, this is a guy who treated me the same, whether I was at the Winnipeg Sun or at the Athletic, or a teammate with Sportsnet or at the Winnipeg Free Press. This guy knew how much I loved hockey, how much passion I had, and I really looked forward to our conversations. And I'm sad I'm not going to have another one. But I know Greg knew how much people cared for him, and I think there's going to be an outpouring of support coming here, and we're just thinking a whole lot about his family and also his colleagues. Anyone who was lucky enough to know Greg, it's a big loss for everybody here this evening.
I just wanted to touch on this. I think this is really good. Nicholas, I think, nails something here that not a lot of people gave Greg credit for. Greg Millen had a distinct voice, which made him very memorable in his line of work. Another one from my youth, no longer with us. I think Nicholas nails this here, and I think it's one of the things that, like, Hockey Night in Canada did really well, but I think Canadian broadcasting in general does really well. Like, Canadian sports broadcasters, you'll see a lot of them end up down in the States. We punch above our weight when it comes to these kind of things, and this is the reason why. Greg had a distinct voice, and how I would describe what Nicholas is talking about here. Greg sounded like, when he was talking, like when I was growing up in Pinawa, Manitoba, and my dad would have a buddy over, and they'd be downstairs sharing a couple beers, watching a game. Greg had the kind of voice that would be one of your dad's buddies down there, busting each other's balls, giving each other a hard time, laughing, enjoying himself, talking about hockey, talking about sports. And I think this is it. Greg's distinct voice was distinct because it was, I don't want to say common, but it was distinct because it didn't sound polished, and it didn't sound he takes the puck and goes in that direction. It sounded like a guy that you'd walk out on a Saturday morning and he'd be in there helping your dad fix the lawnmower or something like that, right? And those kind of guys who just, like, when they're around, everything just seems a little bit sunnier. Everything feels a little bit brighter. The kind of guy that you can't walk into a room without them acknowledging you, Ken, and without doing a little something to make your day a little bit better. And Ken, I'll remember the last experience we had with him. He came rolling into town with John Abbott and Ryan Leslie for a Flames game. And It's been a long time. It said I had the pleasure of doing a lot of games with Greg Millen at the beginning of my career here at Sportsnet. It hasn't been that. I haven't done a game with him for years, and he came in, and I just forgot what an absolute pleasure it was. One of those guys who makes your workday better for everybody around, and you could see the coaches when they walked in and saw him. We're always happy to see him. We are so much richer for having known him and had access to him, and we're going to miss him. Let's get to the game here, Ken. Okay, I'm going to get through this quick because we're already 15 minutes in. But I think that this is an important game. The reason why I think this is important is the Jets come into this game, red hot team, and there's certain things that you need to be able to do if you want to be the kind of team who's going to go deep in the playoffs. And this is what I thought about, Kenny. You and I have talked about this before, but one of the years that the Tampa Bay Lightning are in the playoffs, they go against the Toronto Maple Leafs and they go down 3-2 in that series. And I remember saying to you, you and I were texting back and forth like we so often do when we're at home and watching hockey. And I said in that game 6 there, where they could have been eliminated by the Leafs, and then in the game 7 after that, we always talk about Andre Vasilevsky and how he would shut things down. But they did not allow a shooting lane in those games. They did not allow a free shot. They contested every single dump in, everything. And this reminded me of that. This game is the kind of tool that you can pull out, right? Like, so let's say you are in the playoffs and you're down 3-2, or you're down 3-1, or you're down 2-1, and you feel like you need one. This is the kind of game that you can pull out and just be like, chances are we're going to win. Now, this was a tight game, right? And in the end, what the Jets capitalize on is kind of a bit of a boneheaded turnover. Boa constrictor, waiter says. I mean, it's
speaking our language, Sean. He's speaking our language. He's reading he's in the hot tub.
It's that pressure that you keep applying. But for me, it's beyond that of pressure because the Jets always apply pressure. But here tonight, there's a difference between pressure and making teams crack. And in the end, that's what happened, right? Like I talked about that Blues turnover. It was a bad one, really bad turnover. That's the game winner. Maybe you can't expect that to happen, but forget the pressure. Forget what the Jets do to like slowly force teams to turn over the puck and get their opportunities. The most important thing here is I just don't think the Jets at all give the St. Louis Blues a window to win this game. It's just not there. They're lucky to get the one goal that they got. And then other than that, I really don't feel like they had an opportunity. And I just think this is important because this is the kind of game that I would click and I would red flag right now if I was the Winnipeg Jets coaching staff and say, this game that you played tonight, guys, is a tool. And when your back's against the wall and you have to have a win, if you play this style of game, you just will not give your opponent a chance to win that game. I don't care if they're on a 12-game winning streak. I don't care if they've got all the momentum in this series. I don't care what's happening with them right now. If you play that style that they did tonight, closing off their blue line, forcing them to dump pucks, getting back and getting out of the zone really quickly. And then once they were in the zone, just not giving lanes to shoot the puck or get to the net. This is a game when you need a must win. This is the I expect you to win if you can put this game out there.
Yeah, wild stuff, right? I mean, you're right. It was a crazy game in a lot of fronts, but this was an absolute defensive clinic by the Jets, Sean. 64-40 shot attempts and absolutely dominant in the first period. And, you know, for all the sky is falling folks that were weighing in after Saturday's, poor effort for 40 minutes, we get it. That was not a good game for the Jets. But this is the reason we put up the caution flag instead of the red flag, right? This is why. The Jets played a team that had won 12 in a row and gave them almost nothing the entire game, Sean. High dangers at 5-on-5 were 17-4 for the Jets. And this is not just some Joe Blow hockey team rolling in. They're the hottest team in the NHL. right? But the Jets gave them absolutely nothing. They forced their opponent to make mistakes. Matthew Joseph, what can you not do in that situation in a tight game when you're getting outplayed? You cannot turn the puck over inside the offensive blue line when there is nobody else there. And again, I'm not blaming Matthew Joseph for the game, for the loss by any stretch for the Blues, but that's a play you cannot make. You cannot make that play in a playoff game. You cannot make that play in game 78 when a team is trying to stay ahead of the Minnesota Wild like the Blues are. So, but again, that's the Jets forcing you to do something you do not want to do. So for me, that just an impressive game all around by the Jets. Again, they were sour, Sean. I saw it. I was there. Mark Scheifele, not happy. Cole Perfetti, pissed right off about not taken the opportunity to grab a stranglehold in the Central Division. What do? They play the hottest team in the NHL and tell them, it was a nice run you guys had, but it stops here. So that was impressive on a lot of fronts. It was a no passengers game for the Winnipeg Jets, Sean. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, I like the goals they scored in this game as well. Like both of them to me are the kind of goals that you look back. I mean, listen, I think it's a tired cliche how often people say, oh, this was a playoff game played out there tonight. I think even coaches and players fall into that because the one thing that we've seen, and I saw this last year, Ken, okay, so if you were watching the Jets in the first round against the Colorado Avalanche last year, that had nothing on the Stanley Cup final between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. And to be honest, it had nothing on the third round between the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers. Like the level of hockey, it is surprising to see just how much higher it can ratchet up. So a lot of times when I hear these, oh, that was a playoff game out there tonight, I kind of cringe because it rarely is. This is tonight. This is the style. Like you take a look at the Morgan Barron goal. That's the kind of goals that get scored in games like that. Even the goal that the Blues scores is the fine. They applied a little bit of pressure, caught the Jets on their heels, took advantage in that small little window, but did so in the proper way. And then the final goal that the Jets score is exactly like you said, is the cracking under pressure, right? And listen, to the Spencer Carberry doing the idea of just doing all these little things. Okay, let's grab this little thing and we're going to win this little battle in this game. And if we win enough of these little kind of planks of the game, sometimes it's the power play, sometimes it's the penalty kill, sometimes it's, defending on the rush and all these different kind of things. We do enough of those things, it's going to add up to a victory in this game. And in the end tonight, one of the things that the Jets leaned on was the fact that we keep hearing about them being a more mature team. The St. Louis Blues team, very impressive what they're doing. But a lot of the guys who are carrying the weight are fairly young guys. Like their main guy, I would suggest, is Robert Thomas. I don't think that's crazy to say that. Jordan Kyrou is another one of their major guys. Jake Neighbors out there in that game was getting a lot of play. Broberg on the back end. Like there's a lot of guys that they're leaning on right now and in this 12-game stretch and for the year to get them into the playoffs that are young guys. But in the end, what you get out of them is some younger players making the kind of mistakes we just do not see the Winnipeg Jets making for the most part. So to lean on that at that time, I thought was absolutely brilliant. Good job by the Jets. Ken, I just wanted to give a shout out to the boys of Vittorio Rossi. Neither of us are representing. I had to get out. I've been sleeping in a suit for
yes,
like 10 days or however long it's been here now. I think as much as I love my Vittorio Rossi, it's comfy stuff. I needed to take the suit off. So, but regardless, hard to take it off because you look so good when you're wearing Vittorio Rossi. So if you want the kind of suits that you end up sleeping in because they look so good, you know what to do. Head on down to Vittorio Rossi, ask for Frankie and the boys. Loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you, and they will do you up right. Do you want to give Sweet Lou a shout out, Ken? We should catch up.
Yeah, good idea. Let's do that for sure. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast. And folks, springtime is a great time to be buying and selling your home. Check it out with Lou Ferlin.
Excellent stuff. I wanted to say this too. I just thought that that was a great take from Nicholas earlier on. I'll bring it up here again, but this is just like what made Millsy special. That I think he absolutely nailed this, and so a very important K&R hot take brought to you by Flame and Comfort. Great job, Nicholas. Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort is soon moving. You'll find it will be one of the most expensive showrooms in Western Canada, or sorry, impressive. It's one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside, folks. Visit Flame and Comfort. Let's talk about Brandon Tanev, because he really seemed to stand out in this. I'll say this. So the Prime broadcast came rolling in there. We've got a lot of friends who helped produce that. We're talking to them today. We were going to make a special podcast appearance on the broadcast tonight. We weren't able to do so because of the travel stuff that was involved with us today. That would have been fun. We appreciate the invite, even though it didn't end up working out. But one of the things I'll say they came prepared with and seemed to have in the queue tonight was, stories and talk about Brandon Tanev, who I thought ended up playing just a massive key role in this game, Ken.
Yeah, bang on, Sean. Brandon Tanev, 19 shifts for 11-18, 1 shot, 3 shot attempts, 2 hits, 3 block shots. This was vintage Tasmanian Devils special for Brandon Tanev, hitting everything that moved, blocking shots like Gumby, like he used to when he broke in as a professional hockey player after the Jets signed him out of Providence College. He kind of lives for these kind of moments, Sean. And I know folks were not thrilled that wasn't more done at the deadline, but the Jets filled 2 distinct needs, and they were both on display in this one here this evening. Brandon Tanev just bringing all of that energy that he brings to the table, speed, tenacity, physical nature, getting on the forecheck, killing penalties, blocking shots, all of those things. This is a guy who, again, Brandon's a guy who went to Seattle because he thought they were a team on the rise, right? So, obviously they had the big series win over the Colorado Avalanche in the first round, but things kind of got a little bit flat in Seattle, and he's really seemed to be rejuvenated by the move back to the Jets. He plays incredibly hard every single time on the ice, Sean, and I thought that the bump up on the line with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton, I loved his game, loved everything about how he plays. And, that line ends up getting, Adam Lowry gets the empty netter. But I just thought that Tanev was at his physical force best in this one. And we'll get to Luke Schenn in a minute. But Tanev was just all over the ice. And again, he's not dynamic the way some offensive players are, but you notice him when he's on the ice, because if he's coming at you, he's going to finish the check. He might not get all of you, but he's going to get a piece of you. And that we saw that on display all the evening this evening.
Sorry, I'm just going to get sidetracked for a second here. Roy Mack says statement game, if there ever is one. Like, I agree with this more. Like, I agree that because and the reason that I do is because of exactly what I was saying. Like, this game is a tool. This is a game that they're saying, listen, anyone out there, and I think this is the kind of game that as a statement can sap confidence from other teams, because you can also see too, if you get into an elimination game with the Jets, like if you go down 3-1 to the Jets and it's game 5, this is the kind of game you should expect. And you should just know, like, when you go into a game knowing it's going to be really, really hard, not just to score, but to even get an opportunity to score, even just like a clean shot, that plays with your head. So, like, I agree, this is a statement game. The other one, like I'd said, the whole coming off and it's Vegas, so they beat Vegas, and like I honestly, one of the things about that is, like, I put it this way, I don't think Vegas left that game being like, oh, that's a statement, we can't roll with that team. Vegas is thinking to themselves, okay, we lost that one, we didn't have our fastball, we usually get them, we didn't get them this time, right? So I wasn't there with that. This to me is a statement game because the way that this was played, I don't care if you're the St. Louis Blues, I don't care if you're the Vegas Golden Knights, the Dallas Stars, the Washington Capitals, this would have been a miserable night to play hockey, that kind of suffocating night that just leaves you entirely frustrated. The one thing I'll say in like the Blues not defense, but like I'll give them credit for it here tonight, Ken. This is the kind of game. So they cracked and they made a couple mistakes. Those mistakes end up in the back of the game and boom, that's it, right? But the one thing that they didn't do is they didn't abandon their structure. And there was a lot of times they were dumping pucks and they weren't really having a lot of success with it either. But you could see they kept doing what they'd been coached to do. And it's the point that I talk about the Winnipeg Jets all the time. When they get down in a game, they don't stop doing the right things. So even though this looks like a very tidy choke you out game by the Winnipeg Jets, it's a 2-1 game that the Jets go ahead in the third period with a blatantly poor mistake by the St. Louis Blues. Like, this is one of those games that maybe could have gone the other way or gone into overtime or however it goes, right? But the one thing I'll say, and I say it because, like, who knows, this could be a first round matchup. The Blues are they're a challenge, right? And they're a challenge because this used to be a team that would play the Jets and they'd get sick and tired of not getting anywhere, and then they'd start to try and free flow and be like, okay, well, let's snake charm our way through this or whatever, turn the puck over, and then all of a sudden now you're down 5-1. That said, Ken, I could foresee the Blues in a series like this against the Jets. I think this is an important game because if the Jets do play the Blues, exactly like I said, the Blues are going to go into that series and be like, God, this series is going to be miserable. And if the Jets pulled off a game like this in game 1 and game 2, the Blues are young enough that I think by game 3, you'd start to see cracks in the belief in them starting to do different things and then unraveling in the process there. That's my take.
Yeah, it's super interesting, Sean. And I mean, you're bang on. This is a legit potential playoff matchup. I mean, a lot of the times we're just projecting here, but the Blues only have a 2-point cushion on the Minnesota Wild. And Sean, the Wild have the tiebreaker with regulation wins. So this is a big loss for them, even though they had ripped off 12 in a row and looked incredible doing it. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I just think that this is the kind of game where, if you're the Blues, you're coming in here thinking you just beat the Colorado Avalanche. You're thinking we can beat anybody. And then the Jets basically just, you got this flame going, and the Jets just put the mat all over it, right? I mean, they just put the mat over it. They were like the fire department. They were spraying water all over the place, and there were no remnants of a Blues team that had ripped off 12 in a row, including a big victory over the Colorado Avalanche. Now, again, the Blues would not be intimidated facing the Jets, I don't think. They had a rough outing. The Jets were at their absolute pinnacle. But this is the beautiful series. I mean, if you're Jim Montgomery, I mean, you can tell your guys, no offense, Joel Hofer played great in this one, Sean. He's the reason the game was close. But he left his number one in the bullpen today. So, and not to say that Joel Hofer won 5 in a row and his numbers against the Jets were fabulous. But so again, just this is not to diminish the Jets' victory. I don't think it would have mattered who was in net for the Blues. I'm just saying that it's one of those situations where, it wasn't necessarily, and also too, we know that Colton Parayko was back skating with the St. Louis. I'm trying to go back to that whole pairing with Morrissey and Parayko, Sean, right there, trying to will it into existence. But Parayko's back skating. Now, Dylan Holloway, we don't know if he'll be back for the first round. That's a humongous loss. Holloway has been fantastic. But again, the Jets were also missing Nikolai Ehlers, Neil Pionk, Gabe Vilardi, Rasmus Kapari. You play with who you have in your lineup available. Some folks are asking for updates. Gabe Vilardi is getting close to skating, Sean. That was the update from Scott O'Neill today to reporters who were on the scene. That's a massive development. Neil Pionk could be available as early as Thursday. I'm not sure, but he's definitely trending towards returning before the end of the regular season. That would be massive for the Jets. Ehlers, I also think that, if this was game 1, he's probably out there, but I think they're going to give him a couple extra days to be ready for that matchup on Thursday. And Sean, we talked about how the Jets failed to extend their lead on Saturday. Getting this lead over Dallas to 5 points, at least temporarily. Stars will play the Canucks on Tuesday. We know that's a big game for them, but it gives them a little bit of breathing room. It doesn't take them off the hook. I think I was just looking at a tweet from my colleague Mike McIntyre. Magic number is 5 now for the Jets. 5 points combined with points lost by the Dallas Stars. I've been saying it a lot in the last 2 weeks. The head-to-head on Thursday, I think, still could determine who wins the division. But the Jets gave themselves just a smidge of breathing room today, Sean, by getting it up to 5. Even if it's down to 3 on Tuesday going into that game, it allows them to lose the head-to-head and still have a chance to win out and win the division. But again, I think that this was massive for the Jets. Obviously they would like to win the head-to-head. If they win the head-to-head on Thursday, they will have absolute stranglehold on the series. But again, sorry to ramble on there, but just an impressive showing on so many fronts. And we talked about Tanev, Sean, just quickly on Adam Lowry. Just what an effort. What an effort.
Well,
by
no,
Adam.
let's not go quickly. Let's dig into him. I just wanted to respond to what's going on here because I'm ready to hand out the pristine roofing wake-up call. And I'm handing a note to you, Ken. This is the pristine roofing wake-up call coming to Ken Wee because I'm going to say this. Remember a couple of years back when the Winnipeg Jets were going to miss the playoffs? And I said, like, really early on, like, folks, it's done. The Winnipeg Jets are missing the playoffs. The Renny guarantee. This is not happening. And, like, at that time, people were always, like, pushing and, oh, you don't know, and this and that. And it's like the numbers tell us that wasn't happening, right? And then the year that the Winnipeg Jets almost had that colossal collapse, I'd said early on, the numbers don't possibly add up. Just like even if you are terrible, no one just loses out and everyone wins out. That's not how this works. I said a long time ago, this is over. Yeah. And like tonight, it's over, Ken. Like even if the Dallas Stars beat the Winnipeg Jets, it's over. This is over. This is a done deal. And I know a lot of people, and I was saying the other day, I had this conversation with Jeff Hamilton, and Jeff, I think, was really he was surprised that I was so confident that the Jets were making it. I don't care what your schedule is. And yes, I know we're talking about the St. Louis Blues who just ripped off 12 straight wins. So people are like, well, anything can happen. That's a franchise record. Like, how long have the Blues been around? They needed to pull off a franchise record to win all those games. So I know people were saying to me, look at the Dallas Stars schedule. Look at all the teams that they play that are out of the playoff race or that are, not that good or are in free fall or facing injuries and stuff like that. It's the NHL. Just like the Jets went out the other night and lost to Utah, although you know my thoughts on how they challenged the Winnipeg Jets, but how they lost before that or lost earlier to the Vancouver Canucks. These things happen, and the numbers tell us to know that at some point, as light as the Dallas Stars schedule was in as many games as they had been winning as of late, they were going to lose one, if not more, of those games, which they did. This is the numbers tell us, the stats tell us, the odds tell us this race is over. It was over a long time ago. And in fact, if you can't take the Renny guarantee by now, I don't know what else is going to convince you. Maybe the pristine roofing wake-up call will convince you, and that's means it's time for the pristine roofing wake-up call. You know what that means? Time to give North End Rick the pristine roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy. If you have any roofing, siding, or exterior needs, ask him on down to your place. He'll tell you exactly what you need to do, how they'll do it, and the price you will pay to do it. Or you could call Pristine Roofing at 204-237-7663. Folks, give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call. You will be extremely happy that you did. Okay, time for Adam Lowry.
Sorry. I want to give Jim Montgomery the Pristine Roofing wake-up call. You and I are both very fond of dealing with Jim Montgomery, but a little inside baseball here, and I don't want to speak out of school, but Jim Montgomery's decision to go with Joel Hofer instead of Jordan Binnington cost us our segment today. So I know Monty's probably not watching, but he did not give the people what they wanted, and that was a Hellebuck versus Binnington matchup. It's not the reason the Blues lost, but I'm sour, Sean, because our analysis leading up to everything except the goalie matchup that was not actually happening, everything we talked about ended up being bang on in this game today.
Totally.
So I'm a little sour about that.
So there's the peek behind the curtain. We shot this last night in my hotel room in New York. Ken and I banged this out, and for today. And I guess, Ken, before we get to Adam Lowry, because I kind of love this conversation. What do you think the mindset is behind Jim Montgomery not starting Binnington. Now this is interesting to me. It's
tinfoil hat. This is biz time right now.
Yes, let's
okay.
get out the tin. You know what you've gave me? I'm gonna have to make
you got to find
tinfoil
one
hat that I am going to keep right over here. So for segments like this, I can put it on. We're doing it. I'm gonna make myself a tinfoil hat. It's gonna be great. I'll make it like a little sailboat. But I had really thought about this once the disappointment wore off, that it killed the segment that we recorded, and then we couldn't record a new one because we were in transit on this day. But I wonder, the St. Louis Blues are going to go to the playoffs, right? The way things are right now, I think if you're Jim Montgomery, it's the same thing as I'm saying with the Winnipeg Jets winning this. The St. Louis Blues are going to the playoffs. The question remains, are they going to play the number 1 seed, who's probably going to be the Winnipeg Jets, or the number 2 seed, who are going to be,
Vegas,
not 100%, but
Vegas.
Probably going to be Vegas. So that's a real pick your poison. If that's me, I know you as Jets fans are wanting to feel like, you always feel like Winnipeg's being. They asked the question on Prime to Kevin Cheveldayoff, for God's sakes, about Winnipeg always getting disrespected, which I just think is such a ridiculous storyline. Anyway, but I think that's a real pick your poison. And for the St. Louis Blues, I think that this is Jim Montgomery keeping a bullet in the chamber, saying, okay, well, if you do beat us on this night, just know we didn't have Jordan Binnington in there, and we happen to know that there's a little bit of, or we believe, or would like to maybe even foster the feeling that there's a little bit of Jordan Binnington kryptonite involved when it comes to him showing up against Connor Hellebuyck in really important moments, and not allowing that showdown to happen, so that maybe he could keep that in the back of the mind. He doesn't want the Jets getting a book on Jordan Binnington or a feeling of success and momentum against him.
Yeah, I mean, this I think has more to do with the fact that Hofer had, he won the game, or no, he played. He won the game. Sorry, that we were talking about it on the preview here. 22 saves for Joel Hofer in that December 3rd start against the Jets in Winnipeg, shortly after Jim Montgomery took over. And then on February 22nd, Hofer also played in the shootout loss. Overtime loss to the Winnipeg Jets. So, yeah, but I mean, it's a fair point. The Jets have seen a ton of Binnington over the years. So, I'm not sure if he was keeping the bullet in the chamber. I think this has more.
Hold quickly.
Sorry, my theory is just I'll finish and then I'll hand the floor back over to you. The 3 games left for the St. Louis Blues here, Sean, are against the Edmonton Oilers, Seattle Kraken, and Utah Hockey Club. I suspect Binnington gets all 3, and that's no disrespect. Joel Hofer's had an awesome year and has great history against the Jets, but I have a hard time imagining, with the games being spread out, Edmonton Wednesday, Saturday against the Kraken, Tuesday against Utah, Binnington's going to get all 3 because their series won't start until Saturday. So that's how I see it playing out. The Blues aren't running Binnington into the ground, but he's played a lot coming out of the Four Nations face-off break. So, but again, it's certainly an interesting call. I mean, why not just go Hofer against, one of the games on the week against Seattle, maybe, right? I mean, the marquee matchup is what we all wanted to see.
Yeah. I'll say this. It could be as simple as Hofer's a Winnipeg guy, right? And you like to give the Winnipeg guys,
and he's played great against them,
chance in front of the family, and for sure he's played really great against them. I will say this: Dane Johnson, take it easy here. He says Binnington has been around long enough to have a book on him. The difference between the Jets and Team USA is Connor will be in the lineup. This is a ridiculous take, and the whole idea that it's that like the Jordan Binnington of years past, the Jets will have figured him out in this situation here, is like the thing with Binnington, which I do believe, if I'm going to get the tinfoil hat out, is
tinfoil headband, says gift guy.
There you go.
Love it.
Put on the tinfoil headband is the je ne sais quoi that everyone, like, put it this way. Everyone thought that the Canadians were in trouble in net because they were going with Jordan Binnington, right? Like, them going into this tournament, everyone thought Canada was going to lose because of their goaltending, and then they end up winning because of their goaltending, and therein lies the mystique, the enigma of Jordan Binnington, a guy who came and battled his way out of the AHL and showed up and was a phenomenal goaltender on their way to winning a cup. The next year, when they were, I believe, did they go into the bubble as the top seed in the NHL, Ken?
Not sure.
They were the top seed in the West. I don't know if they were the top seed in the NHL, but top seed in the West. So a great goaltender the next year. And then the Blues kind of fall apart as a team and they get lost in the wilderness for a number of years. And now here they are finally starting to resurface again. But this is just Dane's comments here saying that he's been around long enough to have a book on him is completely ignoring what we all just saw. Everyone thought the book on Jordan Binnington was going to spell disaster for Team Canada, and then Jordan Binnington ended up showing the entire hockey world that he had something that no one thought he had anymore. How many people said, I saw so many tweets that were like, my apologies to Jordan Binnington. I was not familiar with this level of your game at this stage. So ignoring the idea that there's something about Jordan Binnington now that if you were to play him in the play, like put it this way, how many people, if the Jets ended up playing the Blues in the first line, in the first round of the playoffs, would very confidently be brushing off the idea, oh, it's Jordan Binnington and that this is going to be a cakewalk, like they were going into the Four Nations face-off. That's the deal right now. Big Hitter says need a tinfoil sponsor. Hey, Reynolds draft. There you go. If I can't lock that down with Uncle, I don't know, Cornelius Reynolds. I don't know. I'm failing at my job here. Anyways, we'll wrap that up. But what I will say is I'm very much intrigued that if the Blues play in the first round against the Winnipeg Jets, and if Jordan Binnington ends up showing out in that series, if this move tonight by Monty, which ruined Kenny and Rennie's spot on the Prime broadcast, whether it will pay off or not for the St. Louis Blues. Because if it doesn't, then Monty owes the Kenny and Rennie podcast big time.
At least a 15-minute segment. Yes, exactly.
Big time. Anyways, hey, if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. How are we doing for time here? Okay, I wanted to just touch on quickly on Tanev.
Lowry. We forgot about Lowry.
Yeah, we'll go to Lowry. I just wanted to, because I didn't counter with Tanev before. He just fits on that third line. I think what we saw from him tonight was him being like, this is where I want to be. I've been here in the past. I like playing with Adam Lowry. I've said this before. If, when everything gets sorted out, if Niederreiter comes back, I'd be actually very interested to see what that line would look like with Appleton down on the fourth and Tanev up in that spot, because he, like Appleton, he's got that speed, that frenetic style of game. He could play that tip of the spear position, and I wonder what that would open up in a guy like Nino Niederreiter. Hit up on Adam Lowry.
Oh, just an incredible game for Lowry. I mean, yes, Robert Thomas extends his point streak, I think, to 9 games, and I think he's had 16 assists in his last 8 games, up to 76 points for the year, Sean. You and I saw Robert Thomas just starting to emerge in 2019 during that playoff series against the Dallas Stars. Yes, he played well against the Jets, but he really elevated in that series. Man, he is becoming an absolute force, and he's working his way onto Team Canada for the Olympics. You heard it here first. But Lowry, what an effort. I mean, that line was excellent in the game. I was listening to Adam speak on the GOB post-game show, Sean. That line was great. Mason Appleton, unlucky. Backhand goes off the post. You wonder if it could cost them. Then a few minutes, a little while later, Lowry gets his own empty netter, and he's there to pat Mason Appleton on the back and all of those things. But I just loved Lowry's game too. I mean, Tanev was great. I thought Appleton was great in the game. But Lowry, just another, workmanlike effort going up against Robert Thomas. 20 shifts for 15-14. He had 2 shots, 5 shot attempts. I just thought that line was really, really important in this game. And I agree with you. The speed of Tanev is just really important on that line. And Sean, I'm actually, this is not a knock on Niederreiter, but Niederreiter is in a bit of a funk. That's now 1 goal in 22 games for Niederreiter, 23 games for Niederreiter. Again, I'm not saying you need to leave him on the fourth line, but I think there's going to be times when you see Tanev Appleton and Lowry together at various points. Maybe that's protecting a lead. And I think that Nino Niederreiter gets himself going, but that speed element going up against some of the matchups you might see in the, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I think it's more likely that Niederreiter might get bumped down. And just because I think that he would really mesh well with Morgan Barron in that power game. And again, the Jets' fourth line doesn't, necessarily going to be a 5-minute a game line. And again, I'm not saying that Niederreiter would have to get bumped out. I just think there's going to be times when protecting the lead that you're going to see Tanev get a bump up shift just because of the speed element. Then you have the double speed element with Appleton and Tanev. I spoke a little bit about this with Adam Lowry, on the last road trip there. Adam kind of his usual self-deprecating self. Now Lowry also too, Sean, even though it was an empty net or whatever, who cares? Career high in goals for Lowry. Dating back to 16-17 when he set his mark with 15. So Lowry was talking about how, he's not the fleetest of foot. So when you have Tanev and Appleton out there together, there's just a little bit more of a speed element. Obviously, Niederreiter is the best finisher on that line. And again, I'm not advocating to have bumped off the line, but I think it would be more likely that you maybe see Tanev get a bump up than Appleton be bumped down to the fourth. But again, lots of weaponry in the bag for the Winnipeg Jets and Scott Arniel. So we'll see how everything plays out here. And again, I was advocating for Cole Perfetti to get more time on that top line, Sean. Well, Alex Alafalo said, hang on a second here. How about I'll get an important goal and have 6 shots on net and be all over the place in this game? So stick tap to him.
That's why I had said not so fast with Iafallo, and I know he's not as consistent as the guy he's replacing on that top line, but he's done a pretty darn good job on it. Some nights he's not going to do it. I wouldn't move off him too fast because he's shown he's valuable there. We have to do this, Ken. Ken. Oh, sorry, I wanted to say this before we move to Barron, which in Ehlers We Trust says, can we talk about Barron more? We have to. Because what a goal, what a great job by him, and we may be talking about that right away. I just wanted to say this about Adam Lowry. There's a great shot in the NBA Finals, one of the years that LeBron is playing the my San Antonio Spurs, when Kawhi Leonard checks into the game, and LeBron is on the line shooting a foul shot, and you hear a substitution, and he turns and looks, and the camera catches him turning and being extremely upset that Kawhi Leonard is checking into the game, because Kawhi Leonard is just like this human wet blanket in that series that, he kind of came out of nowhere. He wasn't the big three. And then he just came out of nowhere, and everyone was talking about how he was the most important person in that series. I feel like that's how Adam Lowry made the Blues feel on this night. I don't think he lost a puck battle the entire night. So if the puck goes towards Adam Lowry, he just gets the puck and you don't get possession. And now you need to start defending. And now you can't, you lose all your momentum. I just thought he was extremely important and the kind of guy who steals hope from a team. That is a very powerful tool to have in your toolkit. Let's talk about Morgan Barron quickly before we get to the awards.
Well, let's just get to the award. I mean, I'm going to show.
Okay, let's go. Okay. Well, let's start with the Johnson Group Got You Covered play of the game. Let's go to that.
Sure. I thought the Got You Covered was Josh Morrissey's play on the goal by Morgan Barron, which we're going to go into in depth here. Barron makes the play, but Morrissey makes the poke. The poke by Morrissey is a subtle but smart defensive effort that springs Morgan Barron for the goal we're going to talk about in a second here. So I think I'm going to give it to Morrissey. And again, I understand folks can feel however they want. I just thought that Josh Morrissey's fingerprints were also all over this game, and that was a smart defensive effort that really came in handy on that goal by Morgan Barron.
Well, I think he was great in the way that he still, you see Josh really activate when the team is down. Yep. But I think games like this are just more of the. So I talked about Adam Lowry stealing hope. Josh Morrissey, I think, steals hope because I don't think you can apply pressure on Josh Morrissey. Like if he gets the puck in his own zone, you might as well get back to your line and start defending a zone entry, because you're not going to stop him from breaking the puck out. And I think so when you start adding all of these areas on the ice, that if it goes towards Adam Lowry, the Jets own the puck. And if it goes back and Josh Morrissey gets it, now they own the puck and you're not going to get it back from them in that situation. I agree with you. Josh Morrissey was great and very well deserving. The Johnston Group got you covered play of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And Ken, let's just launch right into it. You wanted to talk about Morgan Barron as the TCB lamplighter. Let's talk about him as the TCB lamplighter.
Yeah, just an awesome play all around. And yes, Morrissey makes an exceptional read on that play and pokes it past, but Morgan Barron totally twists Matthew Joseph into a pretzel at the blue line, at the offensive blue line. Blues have control of the puck. Barron makes a smart play, knows that Morrissey is there. He's able to explode through the neutral zone and just makes an absolutely beauty of a shot on Joel Hofer to the blocker side, kind of in that spot in between the stick and the blocker. Just a perfect play. Loved everything about Morgan Barron's game. We've talked about it a fair amount, Sean, even though, yes, we can talk about it more. Since moving to center on that fourth line, Barron has given the Jets an additional element that, with all due respect to Rasmus Kapari and David Gustafsson, both of whom who have had strong years when they've been in there, having that power forward element down the middle, both defensively and in the offensive zone, has really been a boost. Yes, 50% in the circle again today, 2 shots on net, 1 hit in just over 10 minutes of ice time. I think that Morgan Barron is playing some of the best hockey of his career. And again, this is not excuse territory, but I think the Jets really, really missed the physical presence and skating that Morgan Barron could have brought to that Jets Colorado Avalanche series. Not having him was massive on that fourth line, and he's even taken his game to another level since moving to the middle for me.
Well, he has. It's clear he's shown a whole other, extension, a whole nother level of his game, and that's the one thing I think that the Jets have done, and a lot of Jets players have done a really good job of showing over the years. Andrew Kopp was a prime example of that, right? Like, if you keep getting opportunities and you use that opportunity to become a better player, you're just going to keep getting opportunities, right? And I think what this shows me is that, like, there's a lot of people who there's a lot of guys like Morgan Barron who come into the league and and that's not a bad thing. Like Brandon Tanev is an example of that. Brandon Tanev came into the league and he came into the league what he is now. I'm not saying he hasn't refined his game, but he's still very much that. He's that same player. And he's really, really good at it, which is why the Jets went out and got him back. But some players like Andrew Kopp are able to change the way you think about them because they evolve and they just keep adding more elements and more elements and more elements. And then they end up becoming a lot more than what you thought they could be. And you do that by being given opportunities and then raising your game. And that's what we're seeing from Morgan Barron. A goal like this tonight just gives me another kind of idea of where will this guy's game end? It looks like there's more evolution to Morgan Barron's game, and I think he showed that tonight with the Trans-Canada Brewing Company lamplighter of the game, and that's who Ken and I are picking. You should tell us what you think, though. Share with us your TCB lamplighter of the game. You're automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of lamplighter amber ale, brought to you by our friends at Trans-Canada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your 8-pack, head on down to 11290 Kenniston, where you can grab an 8-pack or more down there in their store, or you can go sit down in their amazing atmosphere and have one off the tap there, or one of their many other beers. Might as well get a pizza while you're down there. It's amazing. I was in New York, took Colin to one of what's supposed to be one of the best. Steve Wino's significant other told me about a place she thought was the best pizza in New York. We drove there, went to Brooklyn to go find this place. I got a ticket on the way because I was so excited to get there. Colin thought the pizza at TCB was better. Check that out. So we went to Brooklyn for one of the most notorious New York slices, and Colin was like, I've had numerous better pizzas at TCB. Get to TCB. I've told you it's the best pizza in the city. You got to go check that out. Okay, that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. Ken, what do you got?
Yeah, 15 saves for Hellebuck. Wasn't busy, obviously. I made a couple big ones. I like to save off of Radek Faksa as an honorable mention, but to me, It's a save on Bushnevich in the third period. Sean Bushnevich, the most dangerous player on the ice for the Blues in this one, had the goal, beat Hellebuck on that sneaky shot after the setup by Robert Thomas. He had a really good chance when it was still a 2-1 game. So I'm going with a save on Bushnevich as my choice for the keg save of the game.
Yeah, I think it would be the same thing. Even then, it's kind of like, I think we'd describe it as, another one of those like big and boring type saves.
Yeah, fair.
This is like a true, like, I'm going to say this, people hate that I'm right with this take, but I think it's pretty hard to argue with my take. Like, this is Connor Hellebuck goes unchallenged the vast majority of nights he plays with the Winnipeg Jets. And this is one of those nights when the save of the game is him taking a shot in the chest. Like, that's telling you something about how this team is defending in front of this goaltender. And like I've said in the past, when it comes to the Hart Trophy, this is the description of 60%, 65, maybe 70% of Hellebuck's games this year. He wasn't really that busy, but he was there when he was needed. That doesn't sound like the language of the person who is the most valuable player in the league. He's not challenged very often, but he's there when you need him. You don't say that about, Nathan MacKinnon. Well, he's not challenged very often. You don't need him that often, but when you do need him, he shows up. Like, this is just what we're seeing from Connor Hellebuck this year is obviously and clearly a function of the way that the team is playing around him. And just, we are seeing game after game after game where that gets proven over and over and over again. I forgot to, though, hand out
winner,
the TCB Lamplighter winner from last time, and then I'll get to the keg winner as you'll share with me your keg saves of the game. The TCB Lamplighter winner from our last show, that was Christina Huckalt. Christina Huckalt, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name, which I think is probably Christina Huckalt. Send me your email, and I will send you a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for, I already did that.
You did, yes.
Yeah, it's done. Okay, so you know what to do. Send me that, and then that's taken care of. So now that brings us to our keg save of the game, folks. That was Ken and I's keg save of the game. You should share with us yours, though. If you do that, you are going to be automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show, yeah, that would be, once again, where I've got it here, Hugh Wachenko, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. Ken, anything to say before we get rolling?
Yeah, just a reminder to folks, if you want to be a multiple winner like Hugh Wachenko, get your hashtags in. You want to enter the contest, you can win the contest. And Sean, I know it's been a heavy day, but the people in the chat room need to know. We shared a few thoughts on it, but what was it like to be in the building? And I mean, again, you touched on it after the last show about how special it has been and how you came on board with what would be a special assignment that you'll be telling your grandkids about. But what was it like to see the swan dive into the center ice and the goal from the middle of the slot, crazy shot on Sorokin, covering it all, hearing everyone talk about it? What was it like to be on the scene as history was made on Sunday in Long Island?
Wayne Gretzky I can't remember, Ken, in his last season, he had either 7 or 9 goals. I can't remember what it was, one of those two. But it was quite clear by the end of his career, where they were around the same age. They'd clearly played around the same amount of games. And it was hard for Wayne Gretzky to score goals by that point in his career. If it was 7, I believe, going back to the Jets game, he scored 7 goals in 7 games to hunt down that record. Like, I thought I was gone, and I went on the road. And after the first game on the road, which was the only game that he didn't score in, by the way, I think I covered 9 Capitals games this year. Ovechkin scored in 8 of them. 8 games that he scored in of the 9 games that I covered of his. The shot is just absolutely unbelievable. And I have to be honest, like when you watch it, okay, so I'm hearing rumors, Ken, and I think they're beyond rumors, that Alexander Ovechkin is going to walk away from the league after this year. And it sounds crazy, but there's a
Really?
lot of people who are very certain in Washington that this is it for him. And what you saw was a player who was on a frenetic mission to knock off Wayne Gretzky's record because he's going to finish it. He's going to do the playoffs, and then he's gone to Russia and he's not coming back, playing another season next year in Russia because he's always wanted to go and play one back there and then be done. Okay.
Wow.
So like the idea that if that's the truth, that this guy came out on command and was like, well, at 39, I'm just going to go and lay out a goal per game pace down the stretch to knock off this record, to make sure that I don't have to come back and play another season. Because if that really is in his head and he ends up 2 goals short of the record and then comes back next season and breaks it after game 7 or 8 or something like that, and then has to play out the rest of the season, that's going to be a really weird thing. So like he's going to play in the playoffs, but when you watched him playing, some people will have seen this in Winnipeg. Alexander Ovechkin, the thing that's fascinating about him is he's still got that shot clearly. Think of the shot that he catch and release, how he scored there.
Yeah.
He scored one down the stretch there where he went to the front of the net. You can't move the guy. He's a bear. And he stands in front of the net. He's got a really good stick, so he can tip pucks. He's got that nose for the net. He had a tap-in goal against the Chicago Blackhawks. He's got that little bit of, like Kyle Connor does, where he's got a guy on him and he just pops back a little bit to get space. And if he gets that shot, he gets it off. But what he can't do, think of those goals that he scored early in his career, that one where he goes on that rush and then falls and rolls over and puts it in. He used to score on the rush goals all the time. I don't think, Ken, I saw him win in any of those games that I covered him. I don't think I saw him win a board battle. When you dump it in his corner, he almost never wins the race to the puck. Quite often what that turns into is his line spending a lot of time defending throughout the game. There's a lot of elements of being an NHL hockey player that he just does not have anymore as a player. But what he does have still to this day is if he gets the puck on his stick, and you saw it in that goal he scored in Winnipeg. He did nothing in that game, got that one little shot, and boom, it's behind him. You saw it earlier in the year when he beat Connor Hellebuck on an unobstructed shot from way back near the the blue line and just blew it right over his shoulder. He's got the most dangerous stick that the game has ever seen. That goal that he scores is exactly that. That place was electric. The way he dove afterwards, the celebration, just the way he hunted that down, Ken. I started on that and I thought this is going to be a long grind. And you know me, Ken, I get a little single-minded when it comes to like the job's the job, right? Like people bug me about like putting on a headband with a Jets logo and all this kind of stuff. That's not the way I work. I take my job really seriously. I take impartiality, and I take just like being there to catalog what's happening and trying to do it as emotionless as possible. I take that stuff very seriously. So I think I just went and I was ready to grind. And then somewhere along the line, just in the reaction at Capital One Center, the way that building reacted to his goals, the way when you talk to people, you could see how it affected it, the way that you saw in his teammates, like isolate and watch Strome after he scores that game winner, the way he celebrates, that kid is beyond ecstatic. He's losing his mind. He is completely, utterly, intensely happy in that moment. I don't think anyone caught it on camera. Spencer Carberry, their coach, is going nuts celebrating on the bench. Like this meant a lot to a lot of people. And then it got me thinking, Ken, I remember being a young kid and seeing Gretzky break the record and do the tippy toe dance. And I remember that's an iconic moment from my childhood. And I thought, holy smokes, I'm going to not only watch this happen, do it live, but right after the game, I am going to have a conversation with that very guy who pulls that off and just be surrounded by it and talk to the people most affected by it. It was, I don't want to call it like the opportunity of a lifetime, but it is definitely one of those things that I'm going to walk away. I think a lot of people saw the picture that ended up all over social media of me in behind Gretzky and stuff like that. This was just, there were like gigantic forces at work here, and to be in the middle of it, cataloging it, talking to the people involved. It was, you prepare and try to make sure that you're a very good journalist so that when those moments come up, you can do a very good job doing that. I'll let the audience decide what kind of job I did on it. But those are the moments you want to be prepared for. And it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, you and I were fortunate to cover that Stanley Cup together, and you've covered plenty of them. But yeah, I mean, it's super happy for you. Wish I'd been sitting beside you, to be honest. I mean, this is a moment that, and I got to give credit to Emmy Sadler from Sportsnet.ca. I thought that her rendition of what happened in the building, I thought was pretty awesome too. Read it last night. And again, this is something that those are the things you want to document. I mean, again, cool moment yesterday. Vladdy Guerrero, as a guy who follows the Jays very closely, great moment for their organization. But there weren't going to be many days where Vladdy's news would be the second biggest story in Canadian sports or in sports that day, and it was because of what Alex Ovechkin did. And I'm glad you were there, and I'm like I said, super proud of you, buddy, and awesome. It's going to be something that I know that it gets to be a grind at times, but it's something that man, Ovechkin in the 40s for goals this year while missing 5 weeks with the broken leg. It's bananas what he's done. Anyways, awesome that you were there, and you did a great job. You don't need the fans in our chat room to tell you did an awesome job on Vovi Watch, and also glad you're home. We got some fun around the corner here.
You betcha. Ken, I missed having you down there. I love doing those big events with you. I wanted to say I'll be walking around down there, and you'll be like with these traveling media from different places and people that you barely know, and they'll say, "Hey, Renny," and I'll be like, they watch the podcast, right? Because as people know, if we're referred to as if I get called Renny, it means that you watch the podcast. That's how you know us. So it's nice to see our reach making it into different places like that. And Ken, I've said it before, you've done it before. There's always room in my hotel room if you want to come and crash and cover those kind of things in the future. You know that you just got to bring a CPAP machine or something like that, so I don't have to put up with that snoring all night. That's the only thing, folks. Really appreciate you being here and checking us out here. It's nice to be back in the city of Winnipeg. I'd like to say, or I don't need to say that. I didn't have to miss anyone because we kept doing it on the road. It's going to be a little bit easier to do it now. Just 4 more games here left in the season. 2 of them will be Sportsnet broadcasts. We got Hockey Night in Canada coming up this weekend. I've been talking already with Harn Ryan Singh and Sammy Cosentino. We're looking forward to doing that one, and then end the season with a Wednesday night hockey game against the Anaheim Ducks, where I'm guessing, Ken, that game I will not have to do an opening saying about the Winnipeg Jets needing to lock down first place in the conference. I think it's kind of a done deal for everything right now. I think the Winnipeg Jets are your President's Trophy winners. I think they're first in the Central Division. I think they're first in the Western Conference. The numbers tell us that's going to happen. You guys cannot. I know right now there's people who are worrying that I jinxed it. Don't worry about it, folks. Renny gave you the Renny guarantee in the time in the past. It's always working out. Renny guarantee. There you go. And that's it for us, folks. If you appreciate the conversations that we've been having in this space, as much fun as we have doing it and spending time with you, we would hope that you would appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, the Kenny and Renny OGs and the Johnson Group, the Keg, and of course, TransCanada Brewing Company, who Colin prefers their pizza over best pizza in New York. Got to go check it out, folks. You got to get down there. Anyways, that's it for us. Thanks for joining us. We will do this all over again Thursday after the Winnipeg Jets put a pin in this whole worry about the Dallas Stars catching them up. That's it, folks. Bye-bye.